أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين سيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا مولانا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين اصطفاهم الله أجمعين. أما بعد، فقال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم قوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن يتخذ غير الإسلام دينا فلن يقبل منه. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to continue the discussion which we started yesterday with regards to human growth and the human reality. And it's quite intriguing when we examine it from a different perspective, specifically when we set a context to the discussion and we tackle the discussion through a context. Starting off, I'd like to say that perhaps one of the purposes of our existence is that for us to reach a higher level and come closer to our moral fiber. And it's interesting when we examine our society, it seems like what mostly prevails or what's most important to human beings on a very general level is for us to be moral individuals and we come closer to this moral fiber, which we call it. And no matter how strong a person may get, or how powerful, or how famous, or how rich, or how eloquent, or how beautiful, or how passionate, if the human being does not have this moral fiber which is instilled within them, it seems so that society or the community or human beings are typically not satisfied with the human being. Let me give a basic scenario, which is the American corporation system. If you look at the American corporation system, which is one of the most richest and most powerful systems in the world today, known to man, it's worth billions and trillions of dollars. It controls a lot of the war system, it controls a lot of the industrialization that we see around us. This system is so powerful and strong, and at the same time it's very well known. It's the companies that we all go for, it's the companies that we all love. At the same time, it is so spoken about in America negatively in the sense that these corporations control war, they are immoral, they are willing to overthrow governments in the name of profiteering and money. They are willing to overthrow governments, as we see today in the Middle East. Many of the revolutions that are happening, there is a hand of the corporations in the changing of the governments, simply because there is a financial and monetary benefit to the changing of these governments. And as powerful as they may get, or as rich as they may be, as eloquent and as beautiful from the outside and professional they may present themselves, deeply on the inside, as humans, we ask the basic fundamental question, which is how moral are these institutions? And if they are not moral, then they lose value in our eyes. It seems as if, from the world around us, that as strong as a human being becomes and as beautiful as he is, if there is no moral fiber to the individual, humans lose interest. And there's a basic example that I can give, is if a person has a father or a mother, as caring as they may be, and as loving as they may be, and as close they may be, if this individual is not moral, meaning they lie, cheat, steal, and abuse, then we become repulsed by them. We have a feeling of repulsion, simply because we have been created towards this moral fiber. And it's interesting because today's discussion, I'd like to kind of hinge on that, in the sense that what's really the true purpose behind the human reality which we talked about yesterday. What is truly the purpose of religion? When we're given a religion and we're told, follow this religion in its sets of laws, rules, theologies, jurisprudential laws, in regards to its theological laws, in regards to understanding God, understanding our imams, understanding the Quran. What's the purpose and the point behind knowing all this? What's it really there for? What are all these stories that we say for? What's all of our teachings for? Why does it matter for me to understand? I mean, does it really matter for me to know how the system of God works? People ask this question. If I can be just simply a good person, why do all these beliefs matter? And why can I be a good person without having these beliefs? These are questions which come forward, which hopefully we'll try to answer. If we examine the discussion from a higher level context, we'll come to see that the verse I started off with is quite interesting. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذْ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. To sound, it's an extremely controversial verse, where Allah says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, those who take other than Islam as a religion, God will not accept from them. God does not look at them. God does not take their work for granted. Now what does this mean? Is it a literal meaning? Is there a metaphorical meaning behind the verse? And what does Allah mean when He says that if you do good deeds and you're not a Muslim, then I won't take it from you? Let's kind of dissect this. If you look at Islam from a very general perspective, there are two aspects to the word Islam. One aspect is the noun, and one aspect is the verb. The verb being the actual act of submission to the religion. Meaning I'm an individual, for example, who prays. I'm an individual who fasts, or I'm a sister who observes a hijab. I'm a brother who observes modesty. For example, I have submit to the religion. There's the name or the verb Islam. Now mind you, I can be a non-Muslim and I can still be called a submitter in essence. My essence can still submit. On a second level, there's the noun, which is the actual label of the religion. Sometimes we mix them together. These two must be separated to understand the discussion. On one level, it's the verb of Islam. And on the second is the noun of Islam. It's simply the label. If a human being was to walk in right now and observes no teaching of the religion of Islam and comes and says, I want to be a Muslim and recite the Shahada, the question comes, would we call him a submitter of Islam, or would we call him actually just the name or the noun? Has the person simply put on the necklace or the pendant saying that he's a Muslim, or has he actually acted upon it? Has he actually submitted to the religion? There's a clear difference. And the reason we say a person can submit to the religion but not actually be part of the noun of Islam is because how many times have we seen it where there is a non-Muslim, basic example, a non-Muslim might not observe to the name Islam, might not understand who Ali is, might not know who Muhammad is, might not even know what the Shahada is, has probably never opened the Quran, but you see this person is acting as a better Muslim than the Muslims himself. And sometimes you look at these like, wow, this person doesn't even have a religion, or is not part of a noun of a religion, but their actions are so moral. What's going on? And then we point the fingers at ourselves like, well, why do I need a religion? What's the point of me holding on to some sort of philosophical beliefs and theological beliefs? Why do I have it? What's the reason? Why do I hold on to these rules when I see others who are not part of the religion who are just as great as I am? What is it? Let me kind of get to the bottom of this question because it's extremely important. There's a reality which is so obvious, and because we've been so narrow-minded as humans, at times we can take religion and make us so narrow-minded that we've missed the obvious reality. It's such a beautiful reality, but we've completely missed it because we've become so myopic vision on this concept of religion, Islam. We've forgotten the human reality. Let me kind of come down to this. When Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذْ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ, what is Allah really trying to say? When He says anybody who takes a religion other than Islam as a faith, I won't accept from him. What does it mean? What does that mean? Because at times we give the assumption that Islam is a club, where you are part of this club, and any good deeds that you do as being part of this club, you have now been awarded for your tasks. And if I do the same exact task, or I do the same task with the same intention, or even a better task, outside of the fold of the club, then I will no longer be rewarded for my task, simply because I'm not part of the club which is called Islam. Is that how it works? Is that how we see religion? Is it really as simple as that, where it's either you accept, you do good deeds, and God will reward you, or you're not part of the religion, you'll do great deeds, but God will say, no, I can't accept from you because you're not part of my club, which is the religion of Islam. Is that really how it works? Let me give a basic example. If we look at something like charity, when Allah in the Quran says, for example, that those who give charity, I will reward them, I will give them much more sustenance, or those who give charity, I will prolong their life, we can now assume and imagine and say that my life as a Muslim will be prolonged. If this is the way that religion works, then why is it? It's interesting because we say that as a Muslim, I get the first benefit. Meaning once I give charity, all of a sudden God comes to me and says, you as a Muslim gave charity, I'm going to prolong your life. Simply because you're a Muslim and you give charity, your life is going to be increased. That's not the way it works. Because we know through statistics today that even non-Muslims who give charity, even Jews who give charity, even atheists who give charity, even Zoroastrians who give charity, their lives are also being increased according to studies which are coming out today. Why is that? Because it's not that you give charity and Allah says, oh, because you're a Muslim, now I'm going to reward you. There's a system in place which rewards every human being who comes towards an ultimate reality and a truth. And if you come to this reality as a human being with your pure intentions and your actions, then you are rewarded somehow. Now we'll get to the question as to why is religion necessary, because I know some of us are thinking that question. And it's interesting to say that once we come towards this reality, what happens is every human being is now rewarded. It's not that because you're part of the Muslim club, I reward you, and you're outside of the club, I don't reward you. No. Because we see that even those individuals who are giving charity, who are non-Muslims, who are Jews and atheists, are still getting rewarded and their life is being increased. Why? Allah's saying there's a system. There's a system which we work with as human beings, and there's an ultimate human reality which is past religion. It's deeper than Islam. And I asked this question before, and I would like to ask it again just to see how the crowd reacts to this. And I want to get you thinking with this concept, with this kind of mind frame. If we were to say that the greatest figures that Islam knows today, some of the most influential human beings, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, or the Messenger of Allah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa Muhammad, or for example Imam Hussein alayhi salam, or Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, or Imam Rida, or Imam al-Kadhim, or any of our Imams. Let's say they were the same exact human beings. They had the same purpose, they fulfilled the same greatness, they had the same spirit of submission, and they followed God in the same exact way. But there's one slight difference, is that they were not labeled under the name Islam, and they were simply submitters. Because we know throughout history, there have been examples of individuals who were not labeled under a religion, but were simply known as submitters. Look at, for example, the Quran. The Quran clearly states that Ibrahim was the one who named us Muslims. Allah says in the Quran, for example, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ هُوَ اجْتَبَاكُمْ وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجًا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ أَبِيكُمْ هُوَ سَمَّاكُمُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Allah says that you have been named as Muslims by your forefather Ibrahim. Now there's a logical question which should be deduced from this. Before Ibrahim, Nuh, Adam, the different prophets which came within that period, what were they named? What were they called? Were they Muslims? Were they non-Muslims? What were they? And the answer is there was no label or name which binded these humans. They were simply known as human submitters. They were submitters to a reality or a truth which existed on this earth. There was no label. And we can tell from the difference in history that their religion probably was drastically different than the religion that we have today. Because when Allah sends a religion, He sends it based on the time frame and the relativism to the issues that the people need in that time. God doesn't come to people who are extremely technologically advanced and tell them to use, for example, blood and stone to write their laws in. No, they have specific technologies and they can use their technologies. Now the question that we ask is, what were they called before that? And the answer is they were simply known as submitters. So what that tells us, how many of us would look at a person like the Messenger of Allah Muhammad, or Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hussein, and say that I have an open enough heart to accept the person, the same person who I've known under the banner of Islam, the same exact way, even though he is not under the actual name of Islam. He is not under the binding rule or the noun of the name Islam. Because the way we make it seem is Allah saying, I've asked you as a group of people, and sometimes we make it seem as if we are really basic on a level. It's as if we're scared. We're young kids who are scared, and God is telling us, I want you, as humans, to do good deeds and to give me your homework assignments on a lined piece of paper. And one of us in the crowd, or two of us in the crowd, says, you know what, God, I don't want to do it on a lined piece of paper. I want to do it on an iPad. I'd like to write it on an iPad and put my homework on there. Because this person took their homework and wrote it on an iPad, it's the same quality of work. It might be a better quality than the one that I did on my piece of paper. Does that, in the eyes of God, now when God looks at this, He might say, well, I asked you to do it on a piece of paper, you did it on an iPad. But does it mean that the work is not valuable? Does it mean that the hard work this person put to write it on an iPad is not valuable? Do I take the assignment and say this is completely wrong, there is no substance to this? Or does this individual still grow even though he took the same assignment and wrote it on an iPad and did not write it on a lined piece of paper? Because at times our religion is that way. We say that you do good deeds as a Muslim, that the good deeds of a non-Muslim are worth much less than yours and they see no growth. But what if there's a deeper reality than that? What if we do good deeds not because Islam tells us to or there's a haram or halal system, but because it benefits our human reality. It benefits us as human beings in general and the totality of people. Now that's a different worldview because all of a sudden it's inclusive and not exclusive. Biggest problem that we have as a community is that we've become so exclusive. We're closed. It's me. Now this answers an interesting question because how many times in our minds do we have this doubt? And I know as a teenager this happened to me all the time. I'd be driving in my car, middle of the highway, perfect time to reflect and think. And I'd be sitting and think to myself, well, how do I know this Islam that I have is a true religion? Because come on, there's so many religions out there. There's Hinduism, there's Christianity, other people are doing great things. There are Zoroastrians, there are these people, there's this group, there's that group. Now how do I know my religion is the true religion? What if, as an Islamic law system, Islam is the most complete and right path? And it is. That's why we're Muslims. Some ask, well, why are we Muslims versus other religion? Because Islam is the complete law system. It's today's terms the most complete law system. Now what that says is others, religions, don't have the complete system. That's true, but it does not mean that they cannot find the right path. Simply because if a person is in some sort of error, does not mean they still can't come out successful. Does not mean that they can't grow. Does not mean that they can't benefit and reap benefits, even though they might be in some sort of error. And that's what we say. Now what if, now we look at a human reality, that as much as different religions are there, does it matter that there are different religions out there? Does that really matter? Does that really do anything for us? Or is it about the work that we do as human beings and the growth that we see from the system which we follow? Being blessed individuals who have been born as Muslims, many of us sitting here, we have the most complete system in our hands. And hence we follow the system. But a person who's born in India, who has been completely surrounded by Hinduism, whose whole upbringing was through Hinduism, whose mother and father are Hindus, whose sisters are Hindu, whose brothers are Hindu, who went to a Hindu school and went to a Hindu temple and had Hindu friends and ate Hindu food. I don't know if Hindu food exists, but whatever, I just put it in there. Whatever he does is all Hindu. Can we blame this person for being that religion? And can God on the Day of Judgment really stand him there and say to him, I'm going to condemn you or not accept your deeds or your acts simply because you were geographically placed in this specific area which did not allow you to become a Muslim? Can we say that about an individual who's like that? Now perhaps, maybe the way the system works is that no, there's a deeper reality than the outer garb of religion. There's a much deeper reality. There has to be. Why? Because we all are placed geographically in different areas in the world. And we all look different. We live differently. We are born in different places. There's a deeper meaning to our lives than bickering and fighting over this religion or that religion. Being blessed as Muslims, having the complete system of law in our hands. And that's why we're proud to be Muslims. Why? It's because we have the complete system of law in our hands. It's the complete system. And it's been proven. It's changed and revolutionized the world. If you look at Islam today, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Even Richard Dawkins recently came out with, in a military expo, made an amazing statement. Richard Dawkins, the atheist, the author of The Guard Delusion, he says that all religions are dying in Europe except for Islam. Now that's a big statement to come from the words of a man who's an atheist. What I'm trying to say is, this dogma that we have towards religion, or the viewpoint, or the way that we might see it, creates specific issues within our world. For example, what it does is now it raises other questions. If I see a beggar on the street who is a non-Muslim, should I give him? Or should I refrain from giving him? Or you have people who come and say to you, take whatever money you have, give it to the Muslims first before you give it to the non-Muslim, even though there might be a non-Muslim who is more needy. Now all of a sudden we enter this realm where there is a bias according to religion. Now there's a bias based on this religious belief. Let me give a basic example, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to belittle this Islamic law, but I want to give you the mentality that exists out there. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. That's up for us to judge. But these things happen. There was a brother who I had met recently at a camp, and me and him were talking, and I walked him up to his cabin, helped him with his luggage, walked him up to his cabin, and he says to me, I need something from you. I said, go ahead. He says, there's a leak in my cabin, and I'd like someone to come up and fix it. And I said, sure, I'll get somebody to come up and fix it for you, no problem. He said, I just want to ask you, I would like to ask you, he says, the ones who fix the leaks, the water leaks, are they Muslim or non-Muslim? I said, why? He says, because if he's a non-Muslim, I don't want him touching the water and the water falling all over the floor, then I'd have to clean it. I won't be able to walk around in this water. Now with that, I'm now putting all judgments aside and bringing an objective argument together, an objective discussion. What we're trying to say here is that have we looked at the actual physical fiber of the human being, or is it more towards a theological belief? Is it more that we're gauged towards his human personality, his interest, his background which has made him, his lifestyle, his upbringing, his truths, his human behavior, or are we now more focused on the simple label of Islam? Or how many times do we have in our community where a sister might walk in, or a brother might walk in, and they're not doing the most Islamic thing, and we look at them and our immediate reaction is, look at this person, what kind of Muslim is he? Or what kind of Muslim is she? Or let's say there's a sister who's walking and she's wearing hijab, maybe not the best of hijab. Immediately the eyes look and say, well, maybe she should just take off the headscarf, because why is she wearing it anyway? She's not wearing it properly. We say these things all the time. It's because in our minds, to us, besides seeing that perhaps this person yesterday was wearing something which was even less modest, let's give them a chance and say, maybe today they become more modest. Or let's say, for example, yesterday or today, our vision of modesty is going to change. How would we judge that person in the first place? And how do I look at them and say, well, because they're dressed this specific way, then they must be immodest. Or because his brother's going out and doing this, or because he's not praying, then he's less religious, quote unquote. And what we do is we take our intrusions and we simply label the individual. Instead of sitting with them, let me understand your background. Let me understand how you live. Let me understand why you say the things you say and do the things you do. Perhaps that will give us a much greater conclusion and will stop people from running away from religion. Because I tell you, there's something which takes people away. It's this constant pointing of the finger. That because he wears the latest clothes and because he doesn't have a beard, he must not be religious. I mean, come on, it's so obvious. Or because he wears the latest trending of clothes and this person is not religious. Or because he has a beard, then all of a sudden he's religious. We have these specific stigmas in our community. It's all because we have a preconceived notion of what does it mean to be religious. There is a garb, there is an outer label, and we try to take everything and fit it within this outer label in order to help people understand this is how you should be. And success does not look like that. Success is not a straight line. It's a curved line. People go down and up, and that's how it looks. That's how the world goes. It's beautiful because when we examine the Quran, specifically Ahlul Bayt, the stories of appreciation and acceptance to others, how they accepted others of different faiths, is just completely unbelievable. Let me give you a basic example. One day a man comes to Imam Salih alayhi salam, and he looks at him and he says to him, look, I've got to tell you something. I'm a creator and I'm a God just like your God. I'd like you to picture Imam Sadiq there as one of the most brilliant thinkers of his time. A man who founded so many different schools with thousands of students under his hands with the most creative and advanced models in the time. And he's got a man who comes to him and says, hey, I just want to tell you that I'm a God just like your God. Okay? And he comes and says this to him. Now, the answer that Imam gives him, you think, imagine that you go to a university, you go to, let's say, to the physics department, and you stand in front of a physics professor and tell him, hey, I just want to let you know Einstein made a mistake and I caught it. And he'll look at you like, you're crazy, how could that be possible? That we've been through this thousands of times. There's no conversation even about this. And perhaps the reaction would be like, you are a delusional human being, there's no chance of acceptance for you. Imam looks at them and says to him, okay, that's fine. Show me how you did this. Show me, how did you do this? How were you able to come up with this conclusion? And he says to him, show me exactly where he did this. He walked him to an area where there was soil and sand. Of course, in that area there were worms which were in the soil. And he takes soil, and all of a sudden worms start emerging. And looks at Imam Sadiq, he says to him, well, look, I just created worms. I grabbed soil and then worms emerged, means I just created these worms. And Imam says to him, okay, that's fine. Put them on the ground. He puts them on the ground. He says to him, I'd like you to tell me as your creator, look at the extreme logic and the acceptance, the open heart to dialogue and conversation. It's just unbelievable. It blows my mind. It's not that you're crazy, be quiet, I don't want to listen to you, just go pray in a corner. No, I've got a discussion on my hands I'd like to talk to you about. He says to him, put them on the ground, and he puts them on the ground. And he says to him, can you, as their creator, tell me which one is male and which one is female? Looks at him and says, that's a really good question. I can't really answer that for you. He says, that's fine, no problem. As their creator, can you tell me how much they weigh? Is it possible for you to give me the weight that these things have? And he looks at him and he says, no, really, I can't give you the weight either. He says, okay, that's fine. One last thing, as their creator, you must have the ability to make them go from left to right and right to left. There has to be some sort of control for you over these things because you just created them. And he looks at the Imam and he says to him, no, I can't. He says, you know what, now that you say this, I don't think I created them. He says, well, of course you didn't, because you don't have no control over them. If you created them, there must have been some control factor for you on them. And this logical deduction, there are thousands of stories like this. I tell you, when you open the books and you read, it's not that we need to read every single story and understand that this is the argument. No, there's a principle, which is be acceptive to the other person's experience. Understand where they come from, because this is a huge factor when it comes to empathy. Empathy, what it does, is it allows us to take ourselves and put ourselves in another person's shoes. And we'll discuss this over the nights, inshallah, because it's an extremely, extremely powerful purpose and connection. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to strengthen us and to guide us and make us on the right path of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.